The story so far. Some Borg drones in the collective are mutants who can visit a shared dream space called Unimatrix Zero, which is an odd thing to call a place you go to forget about the Borg, but let's ignore that for now. 7 is one of those, despite the odds being quite literally 1,000,000 to 1, and that's not a joke, those are the actual numbers the show gave us. One of the other members of Unimatrix Zero, Captain Spicybrain, was able to pull 7 back into it during one of her recharging cycles. How was he able to do this? Reasons. Why didn't he do this before, given that they were totally banging? Other reasons. We may not have a reason for the how or the delay, but we do know the reason he's contacting her now. See, the Borg dominatrix has found out about Unimatrix Zero and wants to full-on murderize anybody involved. She's found a way to track them, but Captain Spicybrain and the others have made a mini-bot virus to hide them again. They can't use it themselves because they forget when they wake up, which is why he's asking 7. Janeway's on board with the plan but wants to go even further, dicking with the virus so that members of Unimatrix Zero can retain their memories and fight the Borg from within. But it still needs injecting into the Borg to begin with, which is why she's decided to lead an away team comprising of 3 different essential command staff into the heart of a souped-up megadice. Don't worry though, it's not like her plan is to be captured and assimilated. Oh, for fuck's sake. Robo Tuvok is walking around his new home, and some weird behaviour suggests the assimilation hasn't entirely taken. Having a bit of a chat with Robo B'Elanna confirms this, and after establishing that they got separated from Robo Janeway, they head for the centre of the armoured D6 to engage in shenanigans. Back on Voyager, they're all waiting for a call, presumably from the now Borgified away team. Chakotay sends 7 back into Unimatrix Zero to get everybody ready for when shit kicks off. Speaking of which, Robo Tuvok and Robo B'Elanna are approaching the target, but will need to take out the drone who's currently in the way. Or not, as the drone in question is Robo Janeway. She's already working on getting into the centre, and they'd best hurry. Tuvok has a bit of a wibble, as the drug they were given to prevent them from becoming part of the collective is wearing off, and he briefly hears the hive mind. Which of course means that the hive mind, and particularly the Borg dominatrix, hears him too. And now she's wondering why he's gone and the others aren't there either. Robo Tuvok's fighting the noise now by stating facts from his life to try and retain control, but he's not convinced of the outcome. So much so that he tells Robo Janeway that she might have to disable him, despite the potential danger to him of doing so. We manage to access the core and get started on uploading the virus, but now the Borg dominatrix herself is calling to Tuvok and starting to see his memories. Shit is going to go very pear-shaped indeed if she sees the plan before they're done. Over on Voyager, the Doc has noticed that Robo Tuvok is taking a turn for the worse, and acting Captain Chakotay thinks it's time to catch up with the armoured D6 and be ready to pull them out. Tangentially, they've used a reverse shot for Voyager here as the lights are the wrong way round again, just in case you thought I was joking when I said I keep an eye on that. Back to our away team, and they've finished uploading the virus. Time to bugger off, but Robo Tuvok has other ideas, or should I say 3 of 12 as he's now known. Attempts to disable him go poorly, and the Borg dominatrix, who can see through his eyes now, sends some reinforcements to where they are. Voyager to the rescue! Briefly, anyway, as it's a complete shit show. Tuvok's Borg now, and he has all the command codes, so their shields go down and a firework causes some not insignificant kabooms. Chakotay thinks discretion might be in order, so they discretion the fuck away as fast as they can. Things might have gone pear-shaped for Voyager, but it's not all good news for the Borg either. The Borg dominatrix is starting to notice drones disappearing from the network as they disconnect. There's even one in her inner sanctum, detectable by the fact that she can't hear his thoughts, which is quite a coincidence, what with that whole 1 in a million thing we mentioned, but let's ignore that for now. She asks him what the bloody hell's going on, and he responds with attempted violence. Her shields scupper that, and he's dragged away while shouting. The Borg dominatrix may have solved that one problem, but there are thousands more scattered all over her fleet. Perhaps a conversation with the cores might help, and she has a chat with Janeway via hologram. Presumably the drugs that ran out for Robo Tuvok are still working on her. A demand to help her stop the virus fails. They didn't make a solution, which is probably just as well, given that the Borg dominatrix will soon have access to all their memories. She threatens to take Voyager and force the Doc to make an antidote, but Janeway left Chakotay with orders to delete him if there's an attack. Time for psychological warfare then. A D6 with a handful of silent drones on it. Kaboomed, just to be certain. The same happens with the tactical testicle. The Borg dominatrix threatens to do this with all affected ships, unless Janeway agrees to visit Unimatrix Zero and tell the free drones to rejoin the collective. After all, a Starfleet officer would never choose to be responsible for the death of innocent people, right? It's not a particularly strong bargaining position, and Janeway tells her to balls. She also suggests that the reason the Borg dominatrix hasn't gone there to make the demand herself is because she's afraid she might like it a bit too much. Interesting. Seven's reporting success to Chakotay. Unimatrix Zero is starting to see drones who've kept their memories when back in meat space. That's good, as some insider help on the armoured D6 currently holding our away team would be very useful indeed, given how things turned out for us last time. The Doc joins her on the way back to her cargo bay, claiming he wants to make some alterations to her recharging pod. By a pure coincidence, it also results in a chat about Unimatrix Zero, and becomes a conversation on Captain Spicy Brain. The Doc's noted a biological change whenever she mentions him, assuming correctly that her wish to stop visiting Unimatrix Zero once this is over is down to her avoiding her emotions. To his credit, the Doc uses the logic that he must have been worth the attention previously, and her reaction may not be entirely rational based on the circumstances. Once back in Unimatrix Zero, the free drones are planning. The Borg dominatrix has kaboomed some more ships, so they need to act fast, and they think targeting her control may give them time to figure out a more permanent solution. They also agree to try and help out Robo-Janeway, Robo-B'Elanna, and 3 of 12, so that's nice of them. Oh, and Captain Spicy Brain has stopped being single again. I guess Seven must have taken the Doc's argument to heart, or whatever it is that drives her cardiovascular system. The Borg dominatrix has decided to visit Unimatrix Zero herself, after all. Will it result in a sudden change of heart, perhaps even expanding Unimatrix Zero to be accessible by all Borg during their downtime as an incentive to remain in the collective? Will it fuck? She tells Janeway that it's primitive, a pointless alternative to Borg perfection, and she can destroy it now if she wants to, as she's managed to alter the virus so it'll track and kill all of the free drones. And Unimatrix Zero itself can be the infection vector. They may have disconnected from the hive, but she can go there and infect them all herself, unless Janeway tells them to surrender and rejoin the collective, of course. And that's why she's been allowed to call Voyager. Chakotay and Seven are called down to sickbay to see a holographic Janeway. She explains the situation and gives the order to stop fighting. At least, that's what the Borg dominatrix is supposed to think. What she actually said was that Unimatrix Zero must end, which isn't the same thing, and Chakotay picks up on the distinction. He asks Seven if she can break the link connecting the free Borg to Unimatrix Zero, but we don't get the chance. A Borg ship turns up and we prepare for things to turn pear-shaped. Until it gives us a call anyway, with Captain Meowth on the other end telling us that it's his ship now and he wants to join the fight. Can't help but feel a bit bad for Harry Kim in all this. He's just learned that even Borg drones get promotions faster than he does. Voyager's inbound to pick up the away team as part of the agreement, at least that's as far as the Borg dominatrix is concerned. While she's watching it approach, Captain Spicy Brain is in Unimatrix Zero telling everybody to leg it. They'd best be quick about it, as Meowth's battle bollock, which he's probably renamed to the Gonad of Kales or something by now, is doing a science from inside some space fog. He's working with Voyager to block the Unimatrix Zero connection, something the Borg dominatrix isn't best pleased about when she notices. Let's give her something else to think about and attack. Meowth brings the Kalish Dainuch out of hiding and starts pooping at the armored D6. Voyager joins in as well, and some kabooms happen. That's both good and bad news for Robo-B'Elanna, who we've all forgotten about by this point. It'll mean she doesn't have to sneak about as much, but does come with an increased probability of doing it dead. While she's knocking the shit out of a drone, Seven's running to bed for a quick nap. She's guessed that Captain Spicy Brain is still in there and wants to say goodbye. He promises to find her in meat space, a plot point that I somewhat doubt will come to fruition given that this is the last season. Shields start to weaken on the armoured D6, perhaps due to Robo-B'Elanna's tinkering, and the two attacking ships give it a hand. The Borg dominatrix can see that she's lost, so tries to send a final fuck you by detonating the armoured D6. But exploding ships don't tend to have shields, and that means we can teleport our people back and Scarpa from the giant kaboom. The Doc's been able to remove most of the Borg tech in our away team, apparently helped by that drug he gave them. You know, the one that wore off for Tuvok. Why did Janeway and B'Elanna last so much longer? Because reasons. To be fair, he does say that Tuvok will take longer to recover, so we'll give a point for that at least. Unimatrix Zero is now just plain Zero, but the free drones remain. Will that be a future plot point? I'd give it odds of 10 to 1 against. Captain Meowth says he'll try to keep in touch, but it's implied they're not heading the same way as us. They met another freed Borg ship, so maybe they're off for a bit of vengeance. I guess we didn't bother to ask them for a copy of their transwarp tech so we could get home. And it looks like I was right about Captain Spicy Brain being unlikely to return as, according to Seven, he's in the arse end of the Beta Quadrant. She confides in Janeway that he was more than an acquaintance, and we leave the two of them to bond a little as we fly away. You know, since I called the Borg tired in the last summary, I've been trying to think of why they don't feel as menacing as they once did. I've come to a conclusion, and it's the same one that's been responsible for blunting the impact of a number of other stories. Consequences. The concept of a threat relies on there being consequences to actions taken against you. If the big red reset button makes it all normal again next week, we know any reported threat is essentially ineffectual. The Next Generation could counter that by showing us a load of other Starfleet ships getting completely ruffle-stomped by the Borg, distracting us from the fact that nothing really happens to the people we know. But Voyager doesn't have that method of misdirection. The lack of impact is laid bare, and for a story relying on threat, that makes it a hard sell. It's the same problem that essentially robbed an old Jerry Anderson show of any menace. How will Captain Scarlet get out of this? Who gives a fuck? He's immortal. There's no threat. To tie it into the thoughts from Part 1, I suspect this is why enemies that are shown more than a couple of times tend to take on more depth and transition to an exploration of politics, rather than a simple exercise in goodies versus baddies. It's a way of bypassing that loss of impact, the inevitable result when something we've been told is dangerous keeps failing to be a danger. Of course, all of this waffle is an interesting analysis of the inherent difficulty in making a TV series that remains thrilling, but it doesn't change the fact that this episode wasn't. Nobody's surprised that they got out of it because they're the crew and they get out of things. That's their job. Say what you will about the new Trek shows, but the fact that they aren't precious about keeping entirely the same cast from season to season means they can provide a level of threat that the old Trek shows never really could. Not unless an actor got pissed off and decided to leave anyway. While I'm being a pissy little bitch, let's look at something more specific that annoyed me. Why were Tuvok's access codes, the codes for all of them in fact, not revoked when they started the mission? Even if they expected to succeed, that's still quite the security oversight. It's not like they were unaware that the Borg mined data from their victims. It's even been a plot point in a story back when Seven was aware of the Omega Directive, despite it being super top secret. The reason is because we need to get rid of Voyager in a hurry, of course, but we only need it to happen this way because of the episode previously establishing that the Megacube wasn't enough of a threat to worry them. If, in that first engagement, they'd instead talked up the idea of some cunning plan based on Seven's knowledge, the failure of their second encounter could instead be put down to the cube having adapted. As things stand, we're left with a plot point that both makes Tuvok look incompetent and the Borg look ineffectual in a stand-up fight. Yet more of that loss of threat. We try to be positive where possible here, though, so let's end on a compliment, shall we? The Doc and Seven discussing Captain Spicy Brain was a nice little nod back to someone to watch over me. In that episode, the Doc developed a crush on Seven, which is problematic, I know, but we went over the reasons for that back then, so we won't rehash it again here. What we will point out, though, is the Doc's discomfort at discussing relationships here with Seven, despite him being the one to bring it up. It mirrors what he did previously, the desire to help Seven despite any harm that it's causing to him personally. It also suggests he's not quite as over it as he'd like. Bits like this that aren't overtly called out in the script are precisely the sort of things that elevate the show when they're included. Points to all involved. End of episode.
So, apparently that Admiral were a shapeshifter then.
Correct.
And now everybody thinks Paris is a hero for getting rid of him.
Also correct.
And he's been promoted.
That, unfortunately, is correct as well.
Fuck my life.